Next table, I want to demonstrate whether we can create product table as a second table. So let's start with create table statements, and then now I will move a little bit faster because it's a second table. So let me do it like this: create product table, and I will close here, and I will define each column. So the first one is P code, and it is varchar variable character, and the maximum length is 10. So let's start with this varchar 10, and then let me add a comma, and the next product description. So let me use p descript as column name, and data type is varchar 35 maximum. So let me add this line, and again separator is comma. And for varchar, we must add this maximum length. And if it's a character, the number inside parenthesis means what? The fixed length of that character, right? Okay, now next one, p indate. So p indate is the column name, and for this one we use data type date time data type. Okay, so I will show you what is the actual value looks like when you enter with this data type. But now just let's define the structure. So p indate, and we have p quantity on hand. There's a pqoh, and this is the data type integer. And let me add this here. So integer. And by the way, before we move on, let me just add a constraint as well. So p code is primary key, so I don't need to add non-null or other constraints. But for p description, it's optional. P indate, it is mandatory. So I want to add a not null constraint as well. Okay, p quantity and integer, and also it's not null constraint. So with comma. And the next one is p min, minimum quantity. So let's say p min here, and the same data type. So integer, not null. So let me just copy from the top. So integer data type and not null. And we have a price and the discount rate. So let's use p price with decimal data type. And for the decimal data type, we need to add the total number of digits and the number of digits after decimal point. And again, this is not null. So let me add the not null constraint here. And similar to this, we have p discount. So let me start with this p price. So let me just copy and paste. But now the column name is p discount. And the decimal, we need only 5 digits for this, and the not null. Okay. Now here we need additional column. What is the additional column? It is a foreign key. What's the foreign key? Product is referencing vendor, because one vendor can provide many products. So on the product side, many side, we have vendor code column. So don't forget, this is a foreign key. So what is the data type? Integer is data type. And then we have primary key constraint. So primary key constraint. So what is the primary key for this table? P code is primary key. So we add the primary key constraint here. By the way, in your note for P code, as a kind of skeleton code, there is not null constraint with unique as well. You can add this unique constraint. You can add these constraints for this P code, but actually it is obvious if P code is primary key. So these constraints are redundant if you define this as a primary key later. So it does not have to be there. We can delete just the non-null and the unique constraints because it's already primary key. Now for this product table, we have another constraint. It is referential integrity rule, and we define, yes, foreign key. Foreign, so F-O-R-E-I-G-N, F-O-R-E-I-G-N, IGN key. Okay, so foreign key. And then what is the foreign key? This table is vcode. Vcode is a foreign key. And how can we define it? This vcode is references. Don't forget S. Which table? Vendor table. And if the column name is the same on the vendor table, actually you can skip this step, but actually it's a good habit to explicitly mention which column is matched. So this product table's vendor code is matched with vendor table's which column? Actually same column, so V code. So that's how to define foreign key. Okay, so this is create table statements for the product. And I may add a semicolon to close this one SQL. So each SQL, I'm using semicolon to close it. So now let's try to test it. The product table, only these product table statements I will copy. And then let me try run this here under SQL tab. And if you have a select statement, it's just default statements and then we don't need it. So let's delete. So in the white space, let's paste it. Let's create table product statements. What do you expect? Guess. It's gonna work or not? It may not work. Why? Because it will give you the error. If the error message said, if there is error, try to read it and interpret it and try to understand it. So let's try to understand. So 1.15 cannot add the foreign key constraints. What does it say? Cannot add the foreign key constraints. What does this mean? There must be some problems with, if you go back, this part. So why we have problems in this case? Again, I told you, what's the problem? We do not have vendor table. So how can we reference this non-existing table? So the sequence is wrong. You cannot create product table. To create product table, what you have to create first? You must create vendor first. So let's start to write down, because we will run this after we run create table vendor. So we will just hold it and then let's try to create a vendor first. So table vendor and let's define it. So again, what is the columns? So I will just use my code already wrote down, but you may want to write down from the scratch. So here we have a V code, integer data type, V name, varchar 35 maximum, V contact varchar 15, and the non-null. Area code 3, it's just similar to customer, right? So phone number and the state 2 character, order 1 character, and the non-null constraints. Again, this space you can use either tab or just one space. It does not matter. And then there is for vendor only one constraint. What is that? Primary key. And what is the primary key? Vendor code is the primary key. So that's it. Oh, actually there is additional space. Okay, so let's try to run it. Work? Let's try. So let's try this vendor table. Click go. Yes, it's working. So right now we have a customer and the vendor tables. Okay, and then we will create a product table one more time. So let's try now run the same syntax. And then here, if I run it, it will work? Yes, actually, now it's working because we have vendor tables. So we have currently customer, product, and the vendor table. If you look at product table, if you click structure, not only primary key, P code, there is silver key. Silver key indicates foreign key. So foreign key V code. So V code is a foreign key. And if you want to further know which table this foreign key is referencing, there is a relational view. Let me see. Oh, here on top. So if you click this relational view, you can see that there is a constraint. And this constraint is about foreign key constraint. So if you look at this, column V code is referencing which table, vendor tables V code. So we can get more detailed information about the foreign key when you click this relational view. So let me go back to table structure. Okay, so far we have a customer, product, and vendor table. So we still need to create a invoice table and also a line table. But before we move on, I want to demonstrate the common issues when you will see when you try to delete some tables, like drop tables. So for example, right now in my current database, we have customer, product, and vendor tables. So I already have all the create table statements, so I can always recreate it. So I'm going to drop as a test. Customer table, if I drop it, can I drop it or not? You can actually remove this table without any problems. So let me try to drop it. Actually, if you click this, it is equivalent to running drop table statements, like drop table customer. You can run this under SQL tab as well. But let me just click this drop, and it is kind of risky job, so it will ask one more time. And I will click OK. So I can drop it. So we dropped customer table without any issue. But now we have a vendor and the product table. I want to try to drop vendor table. So if I click drop, it will ask whether you really want to drop. Yes, I will click OK. Then what happens? It will give you the error. Cannot delete or update a parent row, a foreign key constraint fails. What does this mean? You cannot delete parent if child product tables still exist. Does it make sense? It's totally reversed the sequence. So when you create it, which one you must create first? Vendor first, then product. But when you delete it, which one you have to delete? Child first. So product first and then vendor. So if you delete product first, so let me try it. Product. Then I will click OK. Then actually it's dropped successfully. After then, if I redrop this vendor table, does it work? Let's try it. Yes, it's working. So if you remove any linked child table, then you can delete the parent table. But if there is child, you cannot drop your parent table. So let me demonstrate just one more time. Suppose we have a vendor and the product again. So let me change the sequence here. So let's say I have a vendor and the product. So each table is each statement is separate by this semicolon, and this time I will run these two statements all together. So if you are running multiple SQL statements at once, you must specify when this first one ends with a semicolon and when the second one ends with a semicolon. So I will create vendor first, then product. So the sequence is correct. So let me just create one more time. So now I have these two tables again. So is there any way we can delete vendor first? Actually, there is another way, but it's not recommended. But what we can do is, when you click drop, you can see there is a small checkbox. It says that enable foreign key checks. So if you uncheck it, it will ignore the foreign key constraints implemented in this structure. So now let's see whether it's working. If we click OK, now it will just, forcefully, it will drop this table. But it's not recommended because you are ignoring all the foreign key constraints you have implemented. So now you can just drop vendor and the product. But whenever you try to drop it, try to figure out which one is child and which one is parent, and try to drop what? Child first and then parent.